Welcome to the Morning Walk with Murty Digital Stroll. If you want to acquire 117,000 square meters of prime Swiss real estate, you would normally need, well, millions of francs.
Oh, absolutely. Millions of francs, an absolute army of corporate lawyers, and decades of negotiations.
Right, exactly. But today, we are going to show you how one man did it with literally $0 and just a stack of postage stamps.
It is wild.
It really is. We are looking at a masterclass in exploiting the blind spots of modern society.
Yeah, and to really understand how he pulled this off, we have to frame the conversation properly. For you listening, this isn't just some eccentric news story about European real estate.
No, not at all.
Right. Our mission today is to engage in a Gurukul Session. It is a learning experience focused on uncovering foundational truths. Specifically, we are extracting the legacy code of Project Antaryami.
Which I know that sounds like heavy terminology, but it is actually a brilliant way to view the world.
It really is.
We are using what Murty BVNS, who is the architect of Antaryami and the mentor of the Antaryami VA Academy, what he calls the digital prism.
The digital prism, yes.
Essentially, we are going to look at old school physical laws and bureaucracies as if they were lines of computer code.
Right, just to see exactly where the bugs and vulnerabilities are hidden in the real world.
Exactly.
And that is the core of the Gurukul 2.0 philosophy. Murty BVNS really champions this idea that outdated legacy systems, whether they govern software networks or, human societies, they are incredibly fragile.
Highly fragile.
Yeah, especially when they're subjected to a modern digital mindset of optimization. And the story of Jonas Lauwiner is, well, it is perhaps the most literal manifestation of this concept we have ever seen.
It really is. And the story starts in a way that feels almost like a prank, honestly.
It does sound like one.
Right. So I want you to picture the year 2019. We are in Bern, which is the capital of Switzerland. And Jonas Lauwiner, who is just a regular Swiss citizen, he rents out a church and holds this highly elaborate ceremony.
Complete with robes and everything.
Yeah, he has the robes, he has an audience, and he literally crowns himself the king of Switzerland.
Which, on the surface, that registers as pure theater, right? Like some local eccentric putting on a piece of performance art for his friends.
That is exactly what I thought when I first read about it. I initially thought it was just a quirky weekend hobby for a guy with way too much free time.
Right.
But crowning yourself king is just theater unless you have an actual kingdom.
Exactly. You need the land.
You do. And to get that domain without raising an actual army, Lauwiner had to dig deep into the legal architecture of the country. That symbolic ceremony was actually the launch pad for a ruthlessly efficient, perfectly legal campaign to acquire physical territory.
And the sheer volume of land he eventually captured is, well, it is just staggering.
It is nuts.
We are talking about a man who legally acquired 148 separate properties.
148.
Yeah. And he didn't inherit them from a wealthy relative. He didn't, win the lottery and buy them at market value. He acquired them entirely for free.
Which just sounds impossible.
Right. But he did it simply by discovering and weaponizing a forgotten rule in the system.
Okay, wait. 148 separate plots. How does someone even begin to bypass the entire modern banking and real estate system to get one free property, let alone nearly 150 of them?
Well, by doing a systemic audit of the Swiss civil code.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, Lauwiner was reading through the foundational legal texts that govern the country's physical infrastructure, and he basically stumbled upon Article 658.
Article 658, the unpatched bug in the legal mainframe.
Exactly.
Let's really break down Article 658 because understanding the mechanism here is crucial.
Yeah.
What exactly does this century-old clause actually say?
So Article 658 is a piece of classic legacy code. It was originally drafted way back in the early 20th century.
Okay.
And it essentially states that any citizen can claim ownerless land entirely for free.
Just for free?
Just for free. And the process doesn't require a trial or a duel or, a massive public hearing.
Right.
You simply have to send a written letter to the local land registry office declaring, I claim this plot.
Okay, I have to stop you there because that makes absolutely no sense.
I know, it sounds fake.
Right. Because Switzerland is famous globally for its precision, its banking, its meticulous record keeping.
Yeah.
Are you telling me no local banker, no town clerk, literally no government auditor noticed this massive backdoor in their own civil code for over a century?
Well, they noticed it, but they completely misunderstood its modern application.
How so?
To understand why it was left unpatched, We really have to look at the historical context, the why behind the code.
Okay, that makes sense.
When the Swiss Civil Code was enacted in 1912, the country looked very different. Imagine an isolated alpine farmer who passes away with no heirs.
Right, so the land just sits abandoned.
Exactly. The land is derelict. And the state needed a low-friction mechanism to get that ownerless land back into the hands of someone who would cultivate it.
And pay taxes on it, I assume.
Bingo. Article 658 was basically designed as a utilitarian cleanup script for an agrarian society.
Oh, wow. So it was a feature, not a bug, back in 1912. The government actually wanted people to take over abandoned turnip fields so the land wouldn't go to waste.
Precisely the intent. But fast forward to the 21st century. The environment changed, but the base ground remained exactly the same.
Right. Nobody updated the system.
Yeah, local authorities likely forgot it existed because in their minds, every inch of modern Switzerland was already spoken for. And they just assumed the database of land ownership was completely filled and entirely secure.
And this is where the digital prism perspective becomes so illuminating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we build these massive, complex societal operating systems, legal frameworks, tax codes, property rights.
Right.
And over time, we just trust the inertia of the system. We assume that because the law is old and the society is wealthy, the infrastructure must be ironclad. We mistake age for security.
Exactly. The state was operating passively, just trusting its historical momentum. But Lauwiner was operating actively.
He wasn't passive at all.
No, he didn't view the Swiss Civil Code as some dusty historical document. He viewed it as a rule book meant to be optimized.
Like a hacker looking at source code.
Yeah. He looked at the system, saw the lack of a verification loop, and recognized a massive vulnerability.
Okay, let's talk about those bureaucratic gears for a second, because that is where the magic actually happens. What occurs the moment Lauwiner drops his letter in the mail? Why didn't the clerk just, throw it in the shredder?
Well, because bureaucracies are designed to process inputs, not to question them.
Ah, right. Good point.
When a local Swiss land registry office, the Grundbuch they call it, receives a formal application, the clerk's job isn't to act as a judge.
They just push the paper.
Exactly. Their job is to verify if the application meets the technical requirements of the existing law. Lauwiner's letters referenced Article 658 perfectly.
So the formatting was flawless.
Flawless, and the plots he targeted were technically listed as ownerless in the database. So the clerk looks at the law, looks at the database, sees a match, and just applies the stamp.
Wow.
The system simply lacks a sanity check subroutine to flag someone claiming dozens of properties all at once.
It is incredible. I mean, he took a slow, manual, analog process intended for a 1912 farmer, and he essentially batch processed it like a computer script. He was mailing out claims on an industrial scale.
And that scale is what transforms this from a quirky legal anecdote into a literal masterclass in systemic auditing.
Right.
Knowing the exploit exists is only half the equation, right? Executing it requires what Murty BVNS would call a strategic migration of effort.
Taking it from theory to practice.
Exactly. Lauwiner didn't just claim one cute little empty meadow to put a lawn chair on. He initiated a highly targeted acquisition phase.
He started combing through public land registries, actively hunting for these unowned plots. And he wasn't just looking for random patches of dirt out in the middle of nowhere.
No, not at all.
He was specifically targeting infrastructure. You mentioned earlier he acquired 148 properties. How much actual territory does that translate to?
In total, he amassed approximately 117,000 square meters of Swiss land.
That is just hard to wrap my head around.
To give you a sense of scale for you listening, that is roughly the size of 16 professional soccer fields.
Wow.
Carved out of one of the most expensive real estate markets on the planet. And the most critical detail is the composition of that land. His acquisitions included 83 separate roads.
Wait, roads?
Yes, road.
How does a functioning society just forget to own its own roads? Like, I can understand a forgotten patch of forest up in the Alps, but how does an active paved street end up listed as ownerless in the database?
It happens through historical fragmentation.
Okay, what does that mean?
So, over decades, as large estates are subdivided, or as towns expand and absorb private farming paths, the physical reality changes much faster than the paperwork.
Ah, I see.
A private dirt path becomes a paved public street over 50 years, right? But the developers, or maybe the local municipalities, they just fail to legally transfer the title of the soil beneath the asphalt to the state.
So it just falls through the administrative cracks.
Exactly.
So the local citizens are driving to work, the city is out there patching the potholes, but legally, the ground underneath belongs to absolutely no one.
Exactly. Until Lauwiner's letter arrives in the mail. He queried the physical geography of Switzerland like a database.
Oh, that is a great way to put it.
He looked for the null values, the unassigned assets, and he systematically assigned them to himself.
He actually had a brilliant way of describing his own methodology. He called it a military campaign waged digitally and without bloodshed.
Wow.
Yeah, that phrasing is just so revealing. It strips away the illusion of physical conquest.
Yeah.
He didn't need swords. He didn't need blockades. He used data, paperwork, and the state's own administrative rules to completely outmaneuver the government.
And that perfectly illustrates the power dynamics we explore in the Antaryami VA Academy. In the past, controlling territory meant applying brute physical force. But today, power is derived from synthesizing information.
Absolutely.
He who understands the legacy code governing the data controls the physical asset.
But, acquiring the land is really only the first step.
Mhm.
It is one thing to own a random patch of grass. It is an entirely different game when you own 83 roads.
Oh, completely.
Roads are the literal arteries of a community. People need them to go to the grocery store, to go to school, to access their own homes. And this brings us to the most ruthless phase of his campaign, weaponizing the assets.
Right. He transitioned from an auditor to a monopolist. Lauwiner didn't just sit on these roads admiring his new kingdom.
No, he did not.
He began monetizing the infrastructure. He started charging local residents maintenance fees to use the streets he had just acquired for absolutely nothing.
Unbelievable.
And if a developer wanted to build a house on a plot adjacent to his road or simply lay a water pipe beneath it, Lauwiner sold them the rights of passage.
It is the physical equivalent of ransomware.
Yes, that is exactly what it is.
Think about the mechanics of a cyber attack. A hacker finds a vulnerability in a company's network, encrypts their vital data, and says, pay up if you want your files back.
Right.
Lauwiner found a vulnerability in the physical land registry, legally locked up the town's vital infrastructure, and basically demanded a permanent tribute for access.
He bottlenecked the physical bandwidth of the community. He encrypted the public's access to their own daily geography, and he used their own constitutional property laws as the encryption key.
Which naturally leads to a massive standoff. I mean, the state isn't just going to let a self-proclaimed king run a toll booth in the middle of their suburbs.
You think so, yeah.
Right. But what fascinates me is how paralyzed the local authorities were when they actually tried to stop him. At what point does leveraging a loophole stop being a clever hack and start becoming a systemic failure of the state?
Well, the paralysis is the most instructive part of this entire Gurukul session. We operate under this comforting assumption that local councils and national governments possess absolute domain awareness.
Right, that they see everything.
We assume the adults are in the room, actively managing the system, and capable of fixing errors instantly.
Yeah, like if a rule is dumb, the government should just be able to avoid it, right?
You would think so. But let's examine one specific standoff Lauwiner had with a local council. It exposes the profound fragility of blindly trusting these institutions.
Okay, set the scene.
So he had legally acquired a vital local road. The council, obviously realizing their massive administrative oversight, desperately wanted it back to ensure public access wasn't contingent on the whims of a private citizen.
Right. They need the asset back to maintain civil order. So they approach the king. How does that negotiation go?
Well, Lauwiner was actually quite accommodating. He offered to hand the title of the road back to the council entirely for free.
Oh, well, a very magnanimous gesture from the monarch.
There was, however, one condition attached to the free transfer.
Of course there was.
The local council had to agree to permanently rename the road after him.
Oh my God, that is brilliant leverage. He forces them to officially validate his ego and permanently write him into the geography of the town.
Exactly. And the alternative was incredibly steep. If the council refused to rename the road in his honor, Lauwiner stipulated that they would have to buy the land back from him at a price of approximately 150,000 francs.
So the town is forced to choose between eternal glory for the guy who outsmarted them, or paying a massive six-figure ransom for a piece of asphalt he acquired for the price of a postage stamp.
The council was trapped, and the reason they were trapped is deeply tied to the foundational code of democratic societies.
What do you mean?
Well, why couldn't they just arrest him? Because he hadn't broken a single law.
Right.
Why couldn't they just tear up his claim retroactively?
Well,
Because doing so would violate the constitutional protections of private property rights that the entire Swiss economy is built upon.
wow, they were caught in the logic of their own source code.
Yeah.
If the government arbitrarily voids Lauwiner's legally obtained deed just because they find it annoying, they undermine the legal security of every other homeowner and business in the country. They would be breaking the base code of their own society just to fix one unpatched bug.
Exactly. The authorities were forced to realize that passive knowledge of the law is entirely useless.
Yes.
The local council had the exact same access to the Swiss civil code that Lauwiner did. The book was sitting on their shelves, too.
Right, it wasn't a secret.
No. But they only engaged with it passively. Lauwiner took that passive code, activated it, and ran the program to its absolute logical extreme.
He compiled the script, hit execute, and the output was 117,000 square meters of undisputed power.
For you listening, this standoff forces a profound shift in perspective. It challenges the assumption that the systems governing our daily lives are robust simply because they are old and managed by authorities in suits. The infrastructure of our society, whether it is physical land, financial regulations, or corporate policies, is often just a collection of historical patches waiting for someone to actually read the fine print.
So let's zoom out and recap the incredible legacy code we've extracted today, because the implications are massive.
You really are.
We've watched how Jonas Lauwiner used a forgotten piece of 1912 Civil Law Article 658 to legally conquer a piece of modern Switzerland.
He completely bypassed the traditional gates of wealth and physical force, opting instead for a systematic audit of analog records.
Yeah.
By treating a bureaucratic oversight like an unpatched software vulnerability, he amassed a profitable infrastructure monopoly.
He looked at the physical world through the digital prism. But, the real value of this morning walk with Murty Digital Stroll isn't just marveling at a guy who got free roads.
No, not at all.
The underlying mechanism of this story applies directly to you, the listener. Unless you are currently packing your bags for Bern to mail some letters, you probably aren't claiming any alpine real estate today.
Right. The lessons of the Antaryami VA Academy are about applied knowledge in your own environment.
Exactly.
This story proves the immense tangible value of questioning the systems you interact with daily. Every industry, every corporate hierarchy, every bureaucratic process has its own version of Article 658.
Think about your own workplace or your own industry. What are the forgotten rules governing your environment? What are the unexamined systems and legacy codes that everyone simply accepts as just the way things are because no one has bothered to actually read the manual recently?
We become so conditioned by the user interface of our daily routines that we never bother to check the underlying source code.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. The authorities in Switzerland merely interacted with the user interface of their town, the paved roads, the daily commutes. Lauwiner went into the back end.
Sheeped the source code, and he became a king because of it. It highlights how much opportunity is hidden in the boring, mundane documentation that everyone else just ignores.
The text that puts most people to sleep is exactly where the greatest leverage resides.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly unsettling thought for you to chew on as we wrap up today's session.
Yeah.
We have just seen what happens when a self-proclaimed king legally conquers a nation's vital arteries simply by reading the fine print of a century-old document.
If a vulnerability of this magnitude can exist in plain sight, entirely unnoticed within the bedrock of one of the world's most highly regulated legal frameworks.
Or what other outdated, invisible codes are currently governing our lives right now, completely unnoticed, just waiting for someone else to decide to use them? What invisible toll booths are being built around you while you trust the inertia of the system? Thank you for joining us on this morning walk with Murty Digital Stroll. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep looking for those unpatched bugs, and most importantly, keep viewing your world through the digital prism. Until next time.